Hi, all. I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Today is Thursday, December 20th, 2018, and you're watching WGAN-TV live at 5. Today's show, how to build a 3D CAD model with some new tools from Cupix for generating a 2D floor plan as well as a 3D CAD model. Joining me on WGAN-TV live at 5, Cupix Director of Sales, Scott Anderson. Scott, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
And Cupix head of product, Paul Collard. Paul, good to see you as well. Why don't we open up first, Scott, just before we do this deep dive into the 3D CAD modeling, et cetera, and super excited to hear that. For those who are perhaps new to Cupix, can you just give us a little big picture about what Cupix is?
All right, so on a big picture, what we're doing is we're providing 3D 360 surveys, or we can call them tours of spaces. So if you have a 360 camera, you actually have a tool that can map out spaces in 3D, like this office behind me. You just take a couple of snapshots with any 360 camera. You can also use the cameras that come on a spinning head or any form of that 360 data. Once that data is up on Cupix, you've got a virtual tour, something that you can take measurements off of. It's more like a survey than anything else. And you can use that for property showcasing, property marketing. You could use it for facilities management. So if you wanted to walk around a facility without getting up off of your seat and walking around, you could do that. You can use it for construction management, construction documentation. But really at its core, Cupix is taking these off-the-shelf 360 cameras, action cams, which are quite nice. I mean, these things are pretty sweet. You can use them while you're skateboarding or snowshoeing or mountain biking, or you can strap them onto a pole and walk around a construction site or a property and get some really high quality pictures. Basically, we take these 360 photos and construct this 3D environment that has a lot of uses, including virtual tours, but well beyond that, and that's part of the focus of today's show, I expect.
Cool. And then just I'll give some context for the members of the We Get Around Network Forum community, because many of us are Matterport centric. As I would describe Cupix as it's like Matterport. It only is it's created in a different way. So where Matterport uses structured light, Cupix uses a process called photogrammetry, and that means you literally can use any 360 camera, a Ricoh Theta V, an Insta360 1X, a Panono, any 360 camera, rather than perhaps having a proprietary camera that any off-the-shelf 360 camera will work to create a 3D tour. So it's like Matterport, perhaps without that dollhouse view. So there's kind of the little bit big picture on Cupix. And then I think today you have some exciting news about being able to create 2D floor plans. And from my perspective, maybe even more exciting, the 3D CAD modeling. Can you talk a little bit about today's announcement from Cupix?
Yeah, sure. We're really excited to share with the WGAN forum community the new Cupix tools for creating actual 2D and 3D geometry from virtual tours. In the past, laser scanner, like a 3D laser scanner, like Matterport's a structured light scanner, but a 3D laser scanner, or careful measurements with a tape measure or pointer, or diligent scribbling on a piece of paper, or what it took to create a 3D model or a 2D drawing. A lot of concentration or expensive hardware to get you there. What Cupix is announcing to the WGAN forum members is that we can create 2D and 3D CAD models directly and entirely within Cupix from the tours you can capture from any of these off-the-shelf action cams. So that's what we're really excited to announce to this forum community, is the creation of actual 2D drawings and actual 3D CAD models. You can think of them as BIM models too, directly from the tours. So that's the announcement today.
Mhm. And so um, when we talk about a 3D model, we're that's with being able to create it within the Cupix platform. That's about saving, I want to say, probably time, money, and energy in terms of how to be able to create a 3D model. Because I think what you talked about, that the process used to be an architect might go out to a space with a laser measure and in the hand start measuring the space, taking a lot of pictures, going back to the drawing board and literally start recreating the as built for a space that no longer has a CAD model or never had a CAD model.
Yeah, it's tough. It takes a lot of time. What I think we glossed over a little bit here is that these action cams are really fast at in conjunction with Cupix, so we can digitize a space in a matter of minutes compared to a matter of hours or sometimes days for a white light scanner, a structured light scanner, or a 3D scanner. So we have extremely fast field capture time, and that's innate to the Cupix platform and the workflows that we use. So yeah, there's a lot of time savings in the capture, and you also get a lot of time savings in the actual processing. When you think about it, we're capturing 360 photo data, and photos are pretty lightweight. I send you a photo, you send me a photo, we can look at them on our iPhones. We see photos all the time in media. But with a 3D scanner, you're collecting hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, sometimes billions of points. And each one of those points is more than just a little pixel. It's a 3D piece of data. So you take a scan of a wall or the back office here, and you've got, say, 10 million points. That's a heavy piece of data to move around and a heavy piece of data to visualize. So sharing that, it's not something that you can email across. It's not something that you can use an iPhone to view or visualize. It's a really heavy, tedious, it's challenging to work with that kind of data. So we toss that. There's definitely appropriate places for that kind of data. Me, for example, I've got some experience with automotive engineering, manufacturing and design, aerospace, medical, a lot of these free-form type of shapes. So for like a Geary type of building, where you got the free-flowing shapes, a scanner is perfect for that. Also for scanning rocks or cars, you can get these free-form shapes. For a lot of the types of construction that are common, like in the office behind me, it's rectangular, and getting millions and millions of points on rectangular shapes is not really advantageous to extracting a vertical wall or a vertical, all these vertical and rectangles in the space. So we're working with these pictures, and with a couple of pictures in a space, we're working with a much lighter data set that allows us to actually generate the CAD entirely inside of Cupix, entirely inside of a browser, without the need for a heavy duty PC. It's something that you could do on a really lightweight computer, just through the web browser, and without having to think at all about how you're gonna register the scans or import OBJ files or deal with all these different point clouds. So really simplify the process.
And I know we started to mention, wait, hang on a sec, Scott, because I know you're mentioning a lot of terms. And for those that are in the AEC space, they're saying, Dan, let's get going. We want to see a demo. But I also feel that we have a lot of members of the We Get Around Network forum community that are service providers, and they're trying to get their head wrapped around what is this AEC space, architects, engineers, construction, general contractors. So they're looking at this space and say, okay, I kind of get who the target audience is, and in case I run into a prospective architect, engineer, general contractor, people in the construction space, okay, you have a platform that does CAD, but I'm still trying to understand, okay, what is the big picture of why I would need a CAD model? Let's take one more shot at the kind of the big picture use cases of why maybe an architect, for example, would want to have what you're about to show us, so that a service provider can understand what is it that they have to offer, or maybe to say, what problem is a service provider able to solve for an architect or someone who's an engineer or someone in construction in let's say maybe a building that's scheduled for a remodeling. Let's take a remodeling of an office space.
Yeah, those are all some really good applications for somebody that's more new to the AEC space. But I'll take it a slightly different direction. So for the Matterport users that are not as familiar with the AEC space, there's some other applications with 2D and 3D models. Let's take it simple and look at the 2D models. For a Matterport provider that just needs to get a floor plan created, you can use Cupix to capture a space and generate a simple type of floor plan, or basically a floor plan, a 2D floor plan. So that's useful for property marketing, because when you think about it, property marketing is sold based on pretty pictures, which come from a camera like this, that pretty much all the Matterport users are going to have as a nice DSLR to take photos, and the 2D floor plan. So with Cupix, we have a really fast way to deliver that 2D floor plan that a Matterport or any real estate or property marketing photographer will be able to provide with their.
I got it, but I'm a Matterport service provider. It's easy for me to get 2D floor plan. So let's move into the 3D, and you'll demo the 2D floor plan, and we'll take a look at that. But let's dive into that 3D piece of it, of why does that matter? I'm a service provider. I'm talking to an architect. They have to do a remodeling. What's the magic about using Cupix that with this new 3D modeling end-to-end solution is going to matter? Why? What is it that architect? What problem do they have as a service provider that I'll now be able to provide them?
Yeah, it's actually Paul. You want to field that question, because Paul's.
I mean, any projects you do, be it residential, commercial, you're going to have existing drawings, because you're going to have to go through and show the existing conditions, and then show what go through a demolition and show that what's going to be demolished, and then what's going to be constructed new. And you're going to have all that information in your drawings to do that. Now, some still do it in 2D, so we can still provide 2D. Majority of people now are moving to do it in 3D CAD or BIM. So they're going to want that information to be able to, and typically where they're doing that now is if they're not doing, let's say, laser scanning, which is very time consuming and expensive. They're going out with a laser measure or a tape measure and going out there and taking dimensions, writing them down, going back to their office and constructing that either in 2D or 3D. And so what we're allowing them to do is to create a 3D tour, and we have the infrastructure for them to be able to create the basics of that BIM model or 2D model, and then the 3D tour. And I think what you'll see is that we're not creating a full-blown BIM modeling application. Everybody's using their own BIM application for that. So as Scott will demonstrate, we're really just concerned about getting the basic structures of your space. And then to get more detailed type geometry in the space that you're in, our 3D tour allows you to take ad hoc dimensions to be able to get that custom geometry that you need to build within your environment.
So I think what I'm hearing as you describe that, Paul, as a service provider, if I'm talking to an architect and they're doing a remodeling, particularly a commercial space, I would imagine that many buildings today, there's no CAD model that exists because it was designed in an old school way. Or if it was designed in CAD, the building has been modified over time, and it's really important to know what is the as-built today. What is the building look like today as a 3D model?
Yeah,
and
it's those as-built. It's if you have drawings, yes, they're probably not up to date, or if they think they're up to date, they're probably not accurate. Is typically what you find. So either way, the information becomes valuable.
And as an architect who is wants to design something new, I probably don't want to spend my time reconstructing someone else's space. So the ability to save time and to get to the design phase is going to matter to an architect. For the general contractor, it might be saving time and saving money. For the architect, it's the I don't want to. I really would prefer not to have to recreate someone else's work, as opposed to the Cupix 3D modeling is going to enable a much faster and easier process to get there. I mean, that's
having worked in that industry, most architects hate having to create as-builts. So it's the last thing they want to be doing.
So that's what a service provider can alleviate that pain and suffering that an architect feels, and at the same time complete that project probably faster, and also probably at a lower rate of pay. That that someone who's designing is at a level of skill that it almost feels like a waste of their time to be taking measurements and pictures and reconstruction, where the technology now has leaped forward, where it's possible to capture a space so quickly. And I think, just for if you're a little bit new to this, to Cupix, or what Scott talked about a little bit earlier, we did do an entire show on Cupix Slam app, which essentially says which is now, let's see, today, Thursday, December 20th, 2018, is an iOS app in beta that you can write to support@Cupix.com and be able to use 3 360 cameras today, 2 more 360 cameras coming in January, in an automated way, so that it's super easy and super fast to capture 100,000 square feet before lunch. And that's the kind of speed that we're talking about, to be able to capture a space and then being able to turn it into an as-built. So does that kind of bring us to where we are, to then lead into taking a look at the 2D and 3D modeling? Are we at a good point now to actually jump in and actually see it?
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah, I think so. Sure.
So Scott, if you could take us into a demo of what Cupix is announcing in terms of new tools for generating a 2D floor plan and a 3D CAD model. I'm going to keep pushing to see what the 3D modeling stuff looks like. But
so we're definitely doing a 3D model. I don't know, Paul, maybe you can comment on the use of 2D, and why do we know why 2D is so pervasive in property marketing and property real estate, as opposed to 3D. I think it's just an easier way to represent the model, even when architects or new constructions taking place, new designs are taking place in 3D. A lot of the times you're disseminating the information and sharing the information not as a 3D model, but as a plain 2D model. So even though we are creating this 3D model, it can be used for a lot of different applications, including 2D floor plans. I don't know, Paul, you want to comment on that at all?
I would think probably why it's not out there as much is just the cost associated to it. So it's when you are drafting up as-builts of a house, and you're just dealing in the XY, dealing in one plane in a plan view, as soon as you start introducing that Z, it adds more work. You know, you have more information you need to model. So you need to there's more things you need to take into consideration, and it's that Z dimension. So, you know, it's the height of everything. When you're doing it in 3D, when you're doing that in 2D, you just don't care. It's a door, you don't care about the height. If it's a wall, you don't care about the height. If it's a window, you don't care about the sill or the head. So yeah, it's more work, more information to put into your model.
Until today, because now it is super easy.
Well, we're helping to make that easier.
Yeah, so. To capture a space and to be able to do that in a way that wasn't possible in the past. So Scott, are you going to do the demo for?
Yeah, can I show a screen here?
Yep.
Okay, so All right. So
And if y'all are watching the show live, you can ask questions. Come to WGAN-TV WGAN-TV.com. You'll see the live stream, and there's a button to ask a question live on air.
okay, so what I'm going to do is share. Let's start with this. Okay. I'm going to share my whole screen. All right, so what we got here, I'm going to just go through a quick video to give an idea of what's taking place. So everybody's eager to see what this 3D modeling is, how it works. So right inside of Cupix, what we're going to start with is a virtual tour. So the virtual tour has been captured, and the virtual tours directly inside of Cupix. What you're going to visualize and see is the generation of an actual 3D model. So we got a tab inside of Cupix. This is aimed entirely at creating 3D models and 2D floor plans. We can look at dimensions. We can add walls, openings. We can change the heights. We can add doors. So right inside of Cupix, we have this engine. You don't have to leave the browser. You don't need to go to a separate package. You can go directly from Cupix to use the tour to start extracting geometry. So what you're seeing here, and rather quickly, we'll dive into it in a little more detail when I have the application open up. Hope that's okay with you, Dan.
Yes.
Is the generation of 2D geometry and 3D geometry within the web browser without any point cloud data at all. So this is something that we're really excited about, because we know how painful it is to work with millions and millions and billions of points to digitize the space, and all the time it takes, and money and effort it takes to digitize the space like this. The capture here is a matter of minutes to capture, and the generation of this floor plan geometry and 3D geometry takes a matter of minutes too. So it's a really exciting moment for anybody that's creating floor plans or 3D geometry. You can create your as-builts right here inside of Cupix.
Cool.
Cool. Okay. So I got a couple of slides I'd like to go through that might be helpful. So we talked a little bit about a super fast digital twin, and this means capturing spaces really quickly. So we've done this a number of times before, and we covered Paul's probably set the record in terms of capturing roofs and multiple stories and perimeters in the shortest amount of time with the fastest deliverables. But we've seen it time and time again that you can get really fast capture from tours, and the Cupix app is instrumental in that. However, you can use any camera that you want. And then the two workflows that we're focusing on here that tie into CAD, and what we're really focusing on here is building a true 3D CAD solid. So this CAD solid is something that you can use inside of a CAD package like Revit. You can take the floor plan out and use that directly for a design or property marketing. So we'll have a 2D and 3D model that you can use for all these as-builts, floor plan design directly from the Cupix store. What we've covered before, it kind of ties together. One on the one side, we've got CAD Create. On the other side, we have viewing with the actual 3D CAD. So this CAD Create and viewing with 3D CAD really creates an ecosystem around the 360 tours that we're creating inside of Cupix. If you want to create some CAD geometry, you can. If you want to compare or co-view with CAD geometry, you can do that too.
Now, Scott, on this page again, if someone is in the AEC space, they immediately kind of get it. They understand all the terms.
Maybe.
And I don't expect a service provider to do this kind of work that we're looking at, but I need them to know what it's capable of. And we're introducing a lot of words on that screen. So if you could maybe just define some of those words that we're looking at.
Okay, yeah, sure. Right here, when we talk about a true CAD solid, the Matterport community really knows really well what a mesh looks like. A dollhouse view is a mesh. And when you go in and look at the dollhouse view from afar, it looks like you got nice crisp walls and nice clean walls, but we know that's not the case when you zoom in. A true 3D CAD solid is one that has sharp edges. The walls are flat. The doors are rectangular. The casework is prismatic. Everything's nice and crisp and clean. One way to describe a true CAD solid is a design intent model, as opposed to a dollhouse view or a mesh model, which is just kind of rough. Yeah, you would never want to like take design off of that, because you got this jaggedy dollhouse. So a CAD solid is something that's nice and crisp and clean. So something like this is a CAD solid. This is something that's created from the Cupix store. So we can work inside of CAD packages to create designs, to estimate volumes. What else can we do with a CAD model, Paul?
Well, I mean, I think another aspect is that it has true intelligence, and that it has a definition of a wall, has a definition of a door, and those objects are parametric. So it understands the relation of objects within other objects. So a door knows it's in a wall, a window knows it's in a wall, and it knows how to behave appropriately. So that's just kind of the nature of, granted, you're talking about a true CAD model, but kind of getting more into kind of the idea of BIM, which is a building information model. It's intelligent. It knows what those objects are.
So quite a bit different than a blob, a nice looking blob, albeit when you're kind of far away, but a blob of a dollhouse view.
And you'll find a mesh model. I mean, we create a mesh model also, mesh model from Matterport. It's not something you can use in Revit or AutoCAD or other architectural programs. You would need to then take that and, either use it as the template to trace over, but you would have to put it into BIM objects, because that's just not usable. You can't use a wall that's made up of, let's say, it's made up of 1,000 faces. It's just not usable within a CAD program.
It can definitely be used in like a video game rendering. It's great to use it for that, or in a dollhouse view for property marketing, because you can spin it around and get a sense.
But I can't just go put a door in there. It would take forever to do that. You would have to recreate it.
Yeah, I probably have a zoom in or two of some 3D scan data. But definitely you zoom in and you're not putting a wall in there. The walls, the flange, the borders of the wall, the borders of the window are going to look.
Scott, can you go back one slide, and then Paul, could you define some of the terms that are on that slide for us before we move forward?
So
digital twin.
It's just another term, let's say, for a 3D model. I mean, sorry, a 3D tour. Just another term for that.
Okay, so we have the real world and the digital world, and it's called the twin. Same, that's what we're referencing in terms of digital twin.
Yes.
FM, workflow?
Yeah, FM is facilities management.
Okay.
So you have a building, you hear about this more within commercial, but you need to manage that facility. So
we talked about one use case earlier is creating the as-built, and the architect, everyone has a vested interest in having what does the building look like today. But there's also, once the building is delivered, is having the facilities manager have a record of perhaps where everything is in the building, perhaps behind drywall, where the plumbing is located, the electrical is located.
Correct. And one of the things that we're trying to address is what I call the life cycle of buildings, in that you start with a new building, you go through construction, and then you're using that facility. So you're in facilities management, and then you remodel, and it's this endless life cycle, and being able to keep a record of that from the day the building started through the life of that building, and having a digital twin at every phase of that building.
And view actual 3D CAD?
Well, it's a combination of the CAD model and then what we're calling the 3D tour, the digital twin. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. Back to you.
Okay, yeah, sure. view with actual 3D CAD. Really nice to do that because you have the design model and you have what's actually built there. With design CAD designs, you can model out what the different phases of the construction. So you can model out what the place looks like before. You can model out what it looks like as you're breaking it down, demolition phases, the as-built phase, after furniture's coming in. So there's a lot of good use to have a co-viewing between the CAD and the 3D model. So that this type of workflow for instantly viewing and comparing 3D CAD also ties into this ecosystem in terms of working with 360 tours and creating or comparing 3D CAD. So
we won't spend too much time on this because we've done, I would say, almost an entire show of WGAN-TV Live at 5 with Cupix, taking a look at the 3D tour side by side with either a BIM model or side by side with another 3D tour in progress reporting. So if for those that are particularly interested in side by side comparisons and BIM compared to 3D tour, progress reporting. We've done a lot on that topic, so I think we'll probably keep moving forward so we can see kind of what's new with Cupix with this new tools for creating 2D floor plans and 3D CAD models.
Thanks for covering this slide, Dan. You nailed it. All right, so you can do the compare with 3D CAD. So when we're covering this ecosystem, we have the new feature, which is going to be creating a CAD solid. So this kind of wraps up the common types of CAD workflows, comparing and now creating. So directly from Cupix Tour without any scan data, it looks like the text got cut off a little bit. You can build a Revit model. A model that can be used inside of Revit, inside of Navisworks, inside of SketchUp, a lot of these different popular CAD packages. You ask a builder what his favorite CAD package is, it's going to be a Revit, it's going to be AutoCAD, you might have a SketchUp here and there. So we can create these CAD models, bring them in directly into the popular CAD programs. And then from there, you can do your CAD work and refine the design and have an as-built for whatever your digital workflow.
So I think probably the key between this slide and the previous slide, again, for someone who's in the AEC space, they read this and they go, okay, got it, next slide, okay, got it, next slide, and they can't wait to get to the next slide. But I just want to go a little bit slower. Again, for our service providers, if you're talking to an architect, what you want to ask them is, what programs do they model in? And you're likely to hear things like SketchUp and Revit. I think if we go back to that other slide you had up on the screen, Scott, you had some other packages that are.
Yeah. What else?
ArchiCAD.
ArchiCAD and some other lesser, a lot of European, more European users.
So, Paul, did you want to mention some others?
No, I mean, those are the main ones.
And the point here is that you're able to export a data file that can be imported into a software package that architects, designers are using.
Yeah, it's like a perfect starting point. It's almost as if you built the design from scratch, except in the same token as if you're scanning a place with a Matterport scanner or a Leica scanner. You're scanning a place. You're bringing those billions of point cloud data sets in. You're reanalyzing the point cloud data. Just a really, really arduous workflow to get to that original design. And that original design looks like it's designed from scratch. We're providing this exact same workflow where you're getting a design that looks like it's made from scratch. It's something that's completely compatible with these different systems, and you're ready to go once you have this model in.
Okay, great.
Anything to add there, Paul?
Well, I don't know if you have a slide. You're going to talk about the export formats.
Yeah. I was
okay.
Kind of just going through these quick one, kind of boilerplate. But this is inside a Cupix, so you can see the CAD model there. This is a capture that I want to say took anywhere from, I think, about 4 or 5 minutes to capture these photos. It's an office building, and then Yeah, we've got the CAD model there right behind it. The formats that you can bring in or extract from this model. See, this is the CAD model. You can extract DXF. DXF is a common drawing. Actually, Paul, why don't you go through this?
Well, DXF is kind of your common AutoCAD standard for exchange of unintelligent drawings. So you're really kind of exporting just vector information, lines, polylines, circles. And we also support the export of what's called an IFC, which stands for Industry Foundation Classes. And that is, think of it as a generic BIM exchange format. And so either one of those, depending upon what you're looking for, if you are working with a BIM application like Revit or ArchiCAD or those types of applications, you'll want that IFC because it maintains the intelligence of those objects.
It's a standard, the gold standard for interchange file exchange. It's exactly what you want to move files around. Would you say it? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for BIM models, yes.
Gold standard, exactly what you need for bringing into Revit, ArchiCAD. SketchUp.
DXF's been around since probably the late 80s, so old format.
And then you can extract a floor plan. So if you're just doing some property marketing and you want to toss that into a brochure or onto a website, you can grab the floor plan as a PNG and you're ready to go with that.
I think I saw one more slide in your deck before we actually go into perhaps a live demonstration.
Oh yeah, so this is the file inside of a popular CAD system, Revit. I've changed the shading a little bit here and have also added a couple of pieces of geometry, maybe removed a couple of walls, but this represents going from as-built into a new design and taking out some walls, adding some walls, and this is all captured with a couple minutes on site, literally.
So I know we have one of our We Get Around Network forum members is going to end up joining us on the call towards the end, but he is asking us through a chat window a couple of questions. The model that we're looking at, Scott, do you know about how much time it was taken to be from the time, first, I think you mentioned how long it took to scan, but then second, how long to get to that model that's on the right side?
So this model didn't take very long to create. Did not take very long to create.
Is that 5 minutes? Is that an hour?
It's much more than 5 minutes. It's about an hour of time to create this model. I created this model. It was with an earlier version of Cupix. We've gotten quite a bit faster, and then just the learning curve here has gotten a little bit faster. I've got a pretty good a lot of 2D drawing experience, a lot of 3D too. The tool's ready for some really fast geometry.
And can you talk a little bit about accuracy as well?
Yeah, so
this question really comes up. Everyone who's an architect and engineer says, oh, "Okay, but I'm creating a BIM model. Can you give kind of the top down and of how you approach measurement?"
So accuracy, what we're doing is we're changing. I want to call these working spaces because right now we're in this nice clean representation. We're changing from different representations of space. So we're going from 360 photos and we're changing to this nice crisp definition of space where all the walls are flat. So doors are rectangular. So when you talk about accuracy, it's really a loaded question because somebody that's working with doing as-built or working with this CAD geometry is going to make a door rectangular 99% of the time. He's going to make a wall flat 99% of the time. And if there's a ding in the wall, if there's some bow in the wall, if it's a fraction of a degree off vertical, it doesn't matter. He's just going to keep that vertical. So when we create a design intent model, really we're going for something that's nice and crisp and clean and rectangular and sharp. So when we talk about accuracy, we can think about how rectangular the physical object is, and no wall is perfectly flat, no window or door is perfectly rectangular. Or we can talk about how accurate the tour the Cupix tour is that we create. So it's kind of a two-step type of question. When you force things to be rectangular, when you force things to be vertical, when you force 90-degree angles, you're always going to introduce some sort of error, because you're going for that model that's easy to work with, that's easy to build new walls, easy to render and calculate volumes from. So no matter what the process is, even if you're dealing with 1 billion points or a Matterport scan, or doing a hand-drawn drawing, you're always going to go for this rectangular, vertical, 90-degree type of model.
Paul, you want to add something on how accurate?
Well, no, I think Scott hit it on the head there, is that, if I was going out and measuring this, I would go to, I'd take an X and a Y, thinking of just in a 2D sense. I would take in the X and a Y dimension with maybe a laser measure. But that, let's say, could be 10 feet on one side of the room, could be 10'2" on the other side of the room. So that, I think that's what Scott was implying, that every building has that aspect.
Let me speak a little bit from service provider standpoint, because I think we're at risk of losing some of our audience here with their eyes glazing over to go, oh my God, this is way over my head. How am I mean, this sounds exciting, but like, where do I go from here? So let me suggest, from a service provider standpoint, just kick it up a notch. Somebody asked you the question about how accurate it is. The answer is, it's accurate enough for you to bring this model into SketchUp and for you to start proposing designs to your client, because no one's concerned about super accuracy of measurements at this point. It's more of, here's a presentation of what we propose for this space. And then the second piece is the client says, okay, great, let's proceed. The next piece is, okay, we need to get quotes on the floor covering, on the wall covering, on the amount of paint. And the measurements are going to be good enough for quoting on a project. The third form of measurement is that we're ready to go buy windows. And the answer is, it's not good enough. The accuracy is not good enough for deciding on, we're going to go buy a window, is it going to fit? But the good news is, in this space, correct me if I'm wrong, any subcontractor that's quoting on a project and is now, we're past the quote, they're actually ready to actually cut glass, they're going to come out and measure the windows. And that's going to be true for every trade. Scott, Paul, do you want to correct me?
Absolutely. And I mean, we didn't answer that question, but we're getting about plus or minus 1%, which is very similar to Matterport.
So
in some cases, we're even more accurate.
So just to kind of translate that into common speak, if you scan a space and it's
about an inch over 10 feet.
Inch over 10 feet or a foot over 100 feet. An inch
Correct.
over 10 feet or a foot over 100 feet. But again, keep in mind that the measurement's good enough for bringing into a program like SketchUp, and for an architect to propose a design to a client. It's good enough for a general contractor to get quotes from the trades. And then it's not accurate enough for when you're actually buying stuff to install.
Let's say you're looking at doors, you're going to be able to, if you're figuring out a door and you're trying to resolve a door to whether it's a 40-inch door, a 36-inch door, a 32-inch door, that's absolutely doable. So you can
point taken. So, but
it ties into tolerance and the tolerances of the trade. So if some trade is installing glass and the tolerances for installing glass are really tight, then he or she's probably going to want to go out there and
they're going to measure it themselves. So again, for a service provider, be careful not to get caught up in this whole accuracy question, because it's for 2 out of the 3 pieces, it's totally fine. And it's not going to matter whether you're using Matterport. For that matter, if you're using even some LiDAR scanners, it's not going to matter as well. The trades are going to want to come out and do their own measurement, because if it doesn't fit, they're the ones going to have to eat the expense. So they're going to do their own measurements. And then the other piece, I know, Scott, I really do want to get into a live demo of the platform. But I do want to point out for service providers, again, whose eyes may be glazing over to say, oh my gosh, I see that it's exciting, but it's too overwhelming. The good news is that Cupix offers a white label solution that lets you invite collaborators. So you can invite the architect to the experience and let them do all this stuff that Scott's showing us. And they have no idea that it's Cupix. It is totally, I think you're calling up an example to say, it can be your domain name on that white label. And so you can feel good about saying, hey, architect, we'll go scan it and we'll go and within this experience, you can do all this 3D modeling, 2D modeling. You can export the file type. You can import it into Revit, SketchUp, et cetera. And so you can kind of feel confident that you don't have to understand all this stuff that's a foreign language for a photographer. It's just knowing that your platform is like
Absolutely. Yep.
is amazing, right?
White label is totally there, so you can white label the player and share it with the architect. Now, some of the details you're getting into might be we could discuss a little bit more, but yeah, the white label is there, so you can white label and have this complete brand around the items that you're delivering.
Okay, cool. Live demo?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, let's do that.
Because I know, Scott, from my perspective, I mean, I'm a geeky photographer, but like this stuff is like way over my head. But as long as I just fully appreciate that white label solves all that problems, I talk to an architect, I invite them to say, hey, we'll come do we'll come scan your office, whatever it is, and let you play with it and decide if it meets your needs, and figure out how you're going to charge for it. I don't know that's probably a whole nother show. But the point is, as a service provider, if you're presently a Matterport service provider, or you're shooting 360s or photography, photos, video, aerial, whatever, I know this stuff is going to make your eyes glaze over, but don't worry. The answer is white label, collaboration, and you invite the architect in, and you're providing a solution that they will just drool over.
Yeah, it's scan data free CAD design. Pretty nice. Okay, so what we have here is a Cupix tour. So I think, Paul, this is one that you captured actually, but I'll talk over it if you don't mind. But that is Paul,
that's
right?
Fine.
You? Okay, yeah, this is Paul.
Yeah, that's my head.
That's Paul's head, and so he's walking around here. So if you have a CAD model, we're talking about this holistic type of workflow. So if you have a CAD model, then you can bring in the CAD model and have this virtual walkthrough and do a comparison with the CAD model. So this is talking about how you can work with an existing CAD model and get do that kind of comparison. So now let's talk about the 3D creation. This is the comparison. Let's talk about the 3D creation. So oh wait, what happened here? Okay, so with this 3D creation, what we've got is a tour. That's
Excuse me, Scott, can you make it full screen too, so we get it as big as possible?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Okay, so this is a tour that's captured with a couple of different cameras. So we had a Fusion and a Theta V. We had a couple of different cameras here. I'll look at the Theta V, why not? So if we look at the layout, which is one of the tabs, sketch is the next tab, we can see that we've got about 40, 50 different photos, and we can do the same type of walkthrough. What we do inside of Cupix.
Excuse me, again, I just want to clarify. Every time you say photos, I want to say 360 photo spheres, so that we as a photographer know that we're actually using a 360 photo for each of those points that Scott is referring to as photos.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, with the exception of without exception, here in this conversation, I think pretty much all the photos are going to be the 360 photos that we're capturing with the 360 camera. Okay, so this is the Theta V data, so we can look at the mesh. It's a little bit better mesh here, and inside of the mesh, or inside of the tour, we can navigate around, look around, and set measurements. Say, for example, I wanted to set a measurement on the floor. If I wanted to measure from, say, here to the other side of the wall, then I could take this measurement inside of the virtual tour and match it up to a physical measurement that I take with a tape measure. So if I've got a measurement with a tape measure, then this operation that I'm doing, I think it's 63.99 was the actual measurement. This operation scales the tour that I captured back to a physical measurement. So it's a single step to get a tour measured. And that's just a point for anybody that's concerned about scale and accuracy of the tour. You need to take a single measurement to scale the tour. But once you do that, we can jump right into the sketch tab. So let's go into the sketch tab. And take a look at this 3D model that's been created. Okay, so this is a 3D model that we saw a little bit earlier. And if we look at the 3D data and 3D model, we can see that we've actually generated a full 3D model here. And what I'm going to do is just change the visual representation a bit. So we've got a clean background. Okay, there we go. So replace 3D mesh. Okay, so we've got the model without a 3D mesh. So we're generating this 3D model from the tour. So we've gone and taken the 360 photos. Here's a photo and another photo and another couple dozen photos that were captured on the site, and then extracted this geometry from the tour. So let's look at this geometry as a transparent or non-transparent sort of model, so we can navigate through the model and check kind of the integrity of the model, see if it matches up with the actual tour data. And it looks like somebody has moved my tour around, which is not the end of the world. But we can compare that to the actual 3D model, so we can navigate around the same place and see the geometry there and analyze, basically create geometry and compare it directly to the model there. So this is
and use those panos as a template to figure out where it should be located.
Yes, we are using the panos as a template to figure out where it should be located. Yep. Okay, so do you want to see, so we can actually move this geometry around. Say, for example, if I wanted to move a, you know what, this one, you got to slid a little bit, but let's see. Okay, the scale is off. You know why? Okay, I'm working with the wrong data set. We have 7 different data sets here. I think it's the Mesosphere data. Okay, here we are. This nobody messed with my data. I was just opening the wrong one. Okay, so this model was created from I got 6 or 7 different types of cameras in here. This is from the Mesosphere data set. So this model matches up perfectly to the tour. So using the tour as a template, I can look at the actual geometry or look at the virtual tour, and I can go back and forth and see those differences. And we're basically matching up the geometry so that it ties into the model. So for example, if I wanted to modify this door height, I can make this door a little higher or a little bit lower. I can move it to the side or back. I can press on the arrow keys to move it around. So you could do this directly from the 3D environment like that, like so. But when we're working with these the pano data and the 360 imagery, we can use the 360 imagery to match up directly to.
Scott, excuse me. When does an architect design what's going to be different? Is that in Cupix, or is that taking the as-built that can be done in Cupix, exporting it and then bringing it into a different.
No, they wouldn't be redesigning a place in here. This is to capture the as built. So
As built.
no
So you can do some modification, but that's not really the back end purpose of Cupix.
No, that wouldn't be the main use of it. But yeah, sure, you could do some you could do some plain design here if you wanted to. Yeah, I think that the audience will see that as we move along. But yeah, to answer that, yeah, not really the purpose of Cupix. But if you want to put a piece of geometry in here, like this wall, you could do that. We have a region tool where you could draw a piece of geometry, and then if you wanted to move this up or move this down or around, you could.
Oh, okay, so while doable, that's really not the use case for Cupix. It's really to capture the as-built.
Capture the as-built, yeah. So if we look over here, let's find another place where there's some geometry. Let's take these doors out. So let's say these doors aren't here. So I'm going to delete these doors out. And what we can see is that there's a door right there. So I can take and use the door tool, click on the door button, put this door, looks like it's right about there. Okay, see it's matching up, but it's a little bit small. It's too narrow, so I can increase the height. We have door properties here. So if the height is supposed to be a bit high or low, we can make those adjustments with the door. And then we can scale this one way or the other to match up to the geometry. So that's how we can create the door. We can do the same thing with this door. And then we'll have these can snap together. We can switch the handles and just make it as big as appropriate to match up. Yeah, so pretty simple to place doors, place windows, and that's what happened with this geometry. So that's how the doors and windows were placed. Now, if we're talking about actual building, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this level. I'll just start from a blank sheet, and then I'll go to a corner of the place over here, say over in this this area. And from this area, I can set some things like a corner of the actual office. This is an office. And the way that you can do that is you can set an anchoring point. So typically when you're working in a CAD package, you have rectangles and lines and walls. So say if I wanted to add a wall, I could add a wall or a couple of walls here. We're going to have snapping action to snap to the 90s and the primary angles inside of the CAD system, inside of CAD coordinates, or you can work with rectangles and draw rectangles here. But since we have 360 data, we can actually set an anchoring point on screen, and we can anchor a point like the corner of the wall from this perspective, and you can see that this is a different perspective. See, this is same guy sitting there from this perspective and that perspective. So from these two perspectives, we can set a corner point, and that's defined a corner point of the building. And from there on out, that corner point is going to stick to that area of the wall, and then we can just work with the walls from there. So let me show you how that works. If I split this wall up and bring it down, let's get this out of the way. What I can see is that wall is right there in space, so I can kind of get that, kind of guess where that's going to be, not just visually. But what I can also do is let's use a single pane here so we're more focused. What I can use is pick a common edge, and since this edge is locked and this other edge is not is open, I can just pick that edge, and that defines where that location should be. So just a single click, in exactly one click, you can define where a wall is supposed to be. Looks like I got a good guess right there. If I wanted to model on some of the intricacies of this beam, I could definitely do that. But for this edge, I could do the same thing. Just click on the edge, pick the edge, and just with a single click, I've located where that that wall is supposed to be. So if I navigate around, I can see that I'm familiar with this space, but it kind of goes over here, and then it goes in this direction. So now I only have one corner of the building that's over here. So I can go and find that corner of the building, and I can pick this edge, and I could say pick an edge and then lock that on to that edge. And then I can work my way around here into this area of the building. And then I can see that this is a flat wall all the way up to here. So I'm going to split this wall, which is a common CAD operation. And I'm going to, looks like it goes in and it's got a little bit of a pocket. So I'll split this wall, take it over here, and then I'll split it again right here. So just, real simple drawing operations. And then I can pick, and you probably guessed it already, I can pick an edge and lock that edge to that corner. I can pick, zoom in a little bit.
Can you show adding a third dimension, the height?
Oh yeah, we got height here already. So the height is built in here. Yeah, so let's take a look at that. Good question. So we're actually building a model with actual height. So that's sort of implied by the earlier views that we're looking at. With the geometry.
I see the measurements in feet and inches. That could be in metric as well. I just need to set my preference.
Of course, yeah, you can definitely do that.
Okay.
So
All right,
that's
cool.
that's how you can create walls and doors and really quickly, press undo a couple of times, really quickly get to this 3D model.
Cool. Unless there was something else that you wanted to show us in 2D and 3D, I would like to actually see how you export a file.
Okay, yeah, sure. So to export a file, once you have this file here, you can go over here and export as a DXF. You can also export it as an IFC. So those are direct exports that you have from Cupix. It's not showing up here, which is maybe I've got something misconfigured, but directly from the tour, you can export it as an IFC or a DXF, or take a simple screen capture of the actual image. So what we have here from a screen capture perspective, and I'll get into the file formats in a second, is a clean background that we can set up. And we can also do some things like define the text of the office. If I want to call this the waiting room, I could definitely set that up. If I wanted to have this to be the conference 3, I can definitely set that up to be conference 3. And if I wanted to change, say, for example, some of the, you asked about the levels here, changing some of the verticals, I could change some of the vertical heights, like the vertical height you see on this opening. What I can also do is hide and show dimensions. So that's with dimensions hidden and shown. So we can hide and show these dimensions really easily and quickly, and take a nice crisp, clean screen grab. So if I wanted to go into a full screen mode and get the biggest screen grab that I could, I can go right here, just go print screen and have this ready to send off to marketing or somebody that's creating a website. So this is a nice clean deliverable that a lot of the Matterport folks are gonna that are doing traditional photography for sure, where they're doing the standard 2D photography, DSLR photography, are going to be able to deliver this as a piece of the property marketing. The exports as DXF and IFC just show up like you'd expect inside of a CAD system. So here we go. We got a CAD system here, and then this is ready to go. So you can do a file, open and import the IFC file. So if you import the IFC file, you just navigate to the location of the IFC, but we've got this pre-baked, so this is already loaded. And you can take this and do whatever you're interested in doing with it. If you want to change the phases or change the different types of construction or change the views, then you have all those options and then some to to work with the model, but this is basically ready.
Got it. Unless you had something else to demo, I'm actually ready to move on. And was there something you're just dying to show us in terms of 2D, 3D?
No,
I think that's probably sufficient for me. How does this compare to Matterport's MatterPack? Paul?
Well, the MatterPack is really just giving you an OBJ. As far as I know, OBJ, and I think you get the point cloud also, correct?
XYZ, yeah.
Okay. I mean, it depends. And quite honestly, I'm not sure what most people are using to maybe get that into Revit. They're probably taking the point cloud and bringing that into Revit. And what you do is you literally trace over it to recreate that in Revit. So it's a very similar type procedure, except for we're just doing it in the 3D tour.
So you are end-to-end turnkey to take it and then be able to export in a file format that's now actually usable, because the object file is really not usable in Revit or SketchUp. It's got to be converted somehow, some way.
And I, it's we're dealing with, the basic geometry of that space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to look up in the pano, you're seeing ceiling grids, you're seeing soffits and all that type of geometry. We're not meant to be creating that type of geometry.
Mm-hmm.
So
Correct.
You're still gonna rely on your BIM package to create that.
Okay.
But
Scott, could you pull us out of screen share?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So the 3D tour then still allows you to extract that information from the tour just by taking ad hoc dimensions from the 3D tour.
Mm-hmm.
So that information is still available to you.
Okay. I know I have some other things to add and some questions to ask, but I know we had.
Well, I'll point out a big difference is that between the MatterPack and this is that you're talking about 5 minutes to capture on site with hardware that you can get delivered same day from Amazon, and an app that you can download and use. So in terms of accessibility and getting in there, for the service providers, yeah, sure, you got a Matterport system, but you don't. If you got 6 hours to scan and capture a space, go do it. Or you can just shuffle over to the Apple Store or Fry's Electronics, get a camera and get a better deliverable than you can with for architects than you can with the MatterPack.
Cool. I think that'll be something for the community that we get around Network Forum community to talk more about in terms of comparing MatterPack versus Cupix 3D CAD modeling. I want to bring in a member of our community who's been patiently listening in here. And hey, Tim, I'm going to take you off of mute here. And how about introducing yourself, Tim?
Oh, I'm Tim Horner from West Coast Measuring in Vancouver, BC. And we we have both Matterport, the Leica 360 or BLK 360, and this one, the Mija. I don't know how to pronounce it.
MeSphere?
That's the one, yeah. So we're breaking into the AEC market from the Matterport real estate market, and yeah, this is very interesting. One of my questions was, though, once an architect can find this camera like you just suggested, you can order this same day through Amazon, and what's preventing them from doing this all themselves? I mean, nothing really.
Well, I think I'll actually take I'll take a shot at that one, Tim. Is that I believe that there's a specialty for capturing spaces, and so I do believe that service providers some of this is art rather than I'm probably badly saying it, but I do believe if you're an architect, you want to focus on being an architect. If you're an engineer, you want to focus on that. And in a large construction projects, you're used to using subs, vendors, outsourcing. And so rather than, oh gosh, what camera do I need and how do I get up to speed and how do I connect it to a hard hat and do all this, it's easy, fast, and simple to just simply outsource it to a service provider that specializes in it. So even if you get the white label and then someone realizes it's Cupix, I think to some extent, at some point that may just be, okay, that's how they did that. Oh, okay. But I think
yeah, I think it's a really good analogy. Like you go to a construction site, there's people with hammers that whoever's running the job, he knows how to hammer, he knows how to walk through a site. That doesn't prevent him from hiring out the sub. So reality capture, this data capture, these aren't expensive pieces of equipment, nor is real estate photography. I mean, you can get a Canon camera off the street. Any realtor can get one of those and take his own photos, but there's a thriving real estate market for standard photography. You're specializing in the workflow, but that doesn't exclude somebody from taking over the
and the space is changing quickly. So I think you say, oh, okay, I'll go buy a camera, I'll get the platform. Well, okay, somebody has to stay up to speed on how all this stuff works. And so it's a good question, Tim, but
it also depends on the size of spaces, what types of spaces you want to capture. We have just in Silicon Valley, we have architects that if they're doing a real small project, they'll go do it themselves. But when they're dealing with larger scale projects, they just don't want to do it. So, they're hiring people to go out there and do that for them. Just if you're working on a 150,000 square foot building, you're not going to capture it in minutes. It's just not possible. But definitely with Cupix, you can do it very fast. And one thing to realize is that you're not going to, and this is the same case with Matterport, to be able to go out and capture 150,000 square foot, 1-story footprint building, you're not going to rely on Cupix and Matterport to give you accurate as-built from one end of the building to the other end of the building. You're talking a 1% deviation. So, if it was a 300-foot long building, 3 feet? Is that right? It's going to be off by 3 feet. In terms of as-built, I wouldn't want to put my name on that. So you're going to do things like, for example, you have your Leica BLK, use that as a framework to get the overall dimensions, and we fill in the details. So as opposed to spending hours and hours scanning with the BLK, and also a lot more time scanning with that Matterport to fill in the details, use Cupix to fill in the details, because we'll be able to capture it that much faster.
It's the
well, you could also
it's just called in
tape, of course, or a laser measure. BLKs definitely has some advantages for overall scale. Yeah.
While we're waiting for Tim to join the call, I did want to point out that actually a few things. One, I'll talk about a little bit about the loaner program. WGAN, We Get Around Network, does have a loaner program. Today, Cupix Slam app, iOS in beta, write to support at Cupix, Cupix.com to see if you can get invited into that beta. If you don't have a 360 camera, you can borrow from the We Get Around network a MySphere, an Insta360 One X, a Ricoh Theta V, and I'm leaving a couple out, and a Mad V. So we do have a loaner program, and Cupix does have a tier that is no charge. Tim, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Thank you. And Cupix does have a pricing tier that you can start out without paying anything. But we do offer through the We Get Around network the first 6 months free of Cupix. And so that may be something to take a look at. If you're a WGAN standard or premium member, you can have 6 months free, first 6 months free of Cupix. Tim, the name of your company has measurement in it. So talk to us a little bit about what your reaction was seeing this Cupix process, the 2D and the 3D. Is this helpful to you, not helpful to you? Are you blown away, not blown away?
Very, very interesting. It could be very helpful. Now I saw that the model that you made, or the model that Cupix made, you actually made yourself? Now, do you have an AI system that can come in and create the model for us? Or we're still going in there and snapping the walls to the photogrammetry 360s?
Yeah, if you're familiar with a Revit workflow, where you're looking at point cloud data and tracing over the point cloud data, you've got what, like a million points on a wall, and you got to fit up a straight vertical line to a million points. I've done it 100 times, thousands of times. We're doing the same thing. You've got contrast in the images, like you can see the contrast in the office over there. I can see the corner of the office. I'm just fitting a line there. I see contrast in the wall, so I'm doing basically the same thing. I'm just fitting.
So we're starting our model with you guys in Cupix, and then exporting to Revit or whatever we're using.
You can add some stairs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay.
Tim, you're how to say this? I'm geeky, but this is like way beyond me. Ask some tough questions that I wouldn't know to ask.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
I could ask you a question, Tim. How long would a Revit model take to create of this space here? This is, I want to say, 5,000 square feet of space.
10,000 square feet?
It's more like 60. It's about 60. About 5,000 square feet. Maybe about 10,000, about 8,000 square feet. Yeah.
8,000 square feet 3D model.
Yeah.
From like using, say, the BLK.
Well, choose your.
I mean, you'd probably use the Matterport because it has a lot of private offices, I would assume.
Oh, I mean, that's tough.
Before, not now, because now you got Cupix as a possibility, but just, you even have the Hemisphere, but just with the tools.
Well, I'm always asked that question. How long does it take to scan? And if you told me that, 8 hours, got a lot of little offices, I'm going to tell you it's going to take me an hour per 1,000 square feet. Matterport would probably say it's going to take you half that. But it's someplace between 4 hours and 8 hours to scan that space with a Matterport camera. If you have tall ceilings in that space, then you're probably going to use, if you're using Matterport, you're going to use that BLK 360 in order to capture the geometry of the height, if that's important. And I think, Paul or Scott, that probably leads you in to say, well, for that 8,000 square feet, how long did it take you to shoot it with a 360 camera paired with Cupix? Paul, did you shoot the space?
No, I didn't shoot it.
How long would it take you to shoot that 8,000 square feet? Less than an hour?
Here
I'm estimating.
Well, with the BLK 360, it would take, we'd be there for better part of the day.
I mean, that space, I would say give me a half hour.
This space was for 5 minutes to capture, 4.5 minutes to capture.
All right, now our capture time would be significantly reduced. Wow, and
but that's what it's a little bit slightly. So I captured it with the handheld method. The one that was used for the basis of this model was a tripod method, so it did take more like 20 minutes to capture. But the handheld method.
And that's this 8,000 square foot space that you're.
This the 8,000 square foot.
Tim, you're a great candidate to apply for the beta, support at Cupix.com, and get a 360 camera. If you don't have one, borrow it from us.
No, we've got that.
Yeah, you got your. Oh, forgive me. You got your MySphere, and literally with that app, you can say, okay, I'm shooting in this kind of space, and it's going to say, shoot into.
Come on, let's see what's going on there. I'm getting tired of looking at just you. There's so much action on the background.
Tim, maybe you can put it on mute while I'm talking.
Yeah,
I got important things to
playing
say.
around.
I can't be upstaged. My show's been taken over by a 3-year-old.
But so to add to that, Dan, you don't need the app. I saw that you had the handle for the Hemisphere. You could just use that, and here I'll show. Mind if I hijack the screen a little bit while
go for it.
Getting set. All right, so this is me, Christmas time, right after the show. Actually, we're wearing the same hoodie that we did on Tuesday. But this is a capture of the space, and you can just walk around with the Measphere holding the camera in front of you and just take some shots just like this, and you'll have the 3D tour. And using the same methods that I described earlier, you know, you can use the exact same methods that I described earlier to nail that wall and nail this wall. So you don't need anything special other than your selfie stick to go and create a model, actually. So
Scott, if you could take it off sharing. Tim, if you can hear me, what I want. Okay, got to set something up for. Yep. Okay, cool. So, Tim, I want to describe it a couple ways, because I'm always thinking Matterport centric and what you're doing and getting started. So, there's two ways to shoot with this in a simple world. There's two ways to shoot with Cupix. One is just holding your pole or putting it on your hat and walking, and two is using this new app. I would encourage you to get the Cupix Slam app. It'll tell you that it's going to automatically take shots every 3 feet or every 7 feet or whatever it is, and therefore you know that the photogrammetry is going to have success in creating the model. And I think you'd be a lot happier that the app is free. I think if you paired the app with your MySphere, literally walk the space. The short answer is it's certainly under an hour. It might be a half hour. Scott thinks it's close to 10 minutes. However long it takes you literally to, in a methodical way, to walk that 8,000 square feet, to walk down every hallway into every office. Literally, the camera's just shooting off the shots, a little bit like Matterport. Just before you go, best practice, just before you go into the door jamb, take a shot. You're in the door jamb, take a shot. You stepped out of the door jamb, manually take a shot. But otherwise, it's automatically just shooting every 3, 4, 7 feet, whatever the app knows based on the kind of space that you're shooting. And I think what you'll see is go, oh my gosh, that space, if I was using Matterport and Matterport in combination with the BLK 360, might literally take me an hour for every 1,000 square feet, or 8 hours. And now you're talking about something that might take you literally under a half hour. And you say, well, how am I going to make a living if it only takes me a half hour? Well, there's two things that does. It means that you probably can beat out anyone else who's shooting the space, because you now know the power of what we're talking about, and you can do more jobs in a day. Or I think more importantly for all of us in the We Get Around Network Forum community, we can do progress report documentation. So that 8,000 square feet, as it's being constructed over the next 10 months or so, every week you can go out and shoot the same space over and over and over again, once a week, in order to show progress reporting for all the constituencies that are actually interested in that. Anyway, if you could be shooting,
and I think one other point is realizing.
Hang on, Paul. Hang on. I just want to get Tim's reaction to that.
Yeah, no, that's big. That's the future I see, is the construction documentation, showing a contractor, a builder, a developer progress throughout the project. And to be able to do that in, the morning before all the trades get in, and we can be in and out in minutes rather than the few hours it takes us now. That's a game changer.
And I think the technique that Scott was describing, where he's just holding it out in front of him, in that use case, he didn't care that he was in the imagery. For many of us Matterport service providers are shooting houses, of course, that workflow doesn't work at all. On the other hand, again, if you just want to measure the space, you could care less whether you're in the imagery or not. So just holding the Measphere and going off and shoot. And incidentally, because of how this whole process works, whether you're holding it sideways or up or on a slant, it doesn't matter. It'll all process correctly on the Cupix platform.
And that's what I was going to mention, Dan, was the understanding really what you're trying to get. If doing it the way Scott showed, it's not for marketing. But what you'll find in commercial commercial architecture or construction, you know, they have a very specific need that they want to solve. And you don't need all the bells and whistles as long as you can solve that at a reasonable price. And we're part of that is what we're trying to address is doing it fast enough so that one, you can make money doing this, but it's going to be cheap enough for that person such that they're going to want to be able to do it. So we're making you do it fast enough so that you can get that business.
Speaking of pricing, you may have mentioned this in another video. Can you go through your pricing and specifically what the gigabyte per workspace means, and how many gigabytes we may need for, say, that 8,000 square foot job?
Scott, do you want to go to your pricing page? Can you share screen on that and walk us through it?
Yeah, we could do that. Sure.
This is at Cupix.com, Cupix.com. There's a tab that says pricing. Scott's going to pull that up on his screen. Thanks for asking that question, Tim. Tim, I do want you to ask some technical questions. You know, that you're in a deep. I don't know the right questions to ask. You'll know the questions to ask after you've seen this presentation.
Maybe we'll see.
Okay.
Okay, so you can't see my screen yet. All right, so share screen. Share screen. All right. So here's the.
I think you have the. We also see all the images on the right side. Can you do full screen?
Here's the images that we took for the satellite office right over here.
Okay.
So there's 84 images. It's 150 megabytes. This is a slightly lower resolution than the Hemisphere camera. I think it's about 15, whereas the Hemisphere is maybe a little bit higher. So we'll keep that in mind as we navigate through the pricing page. So we're looking at the pricing page right now on Cupix.com. Don't get dissuaded if you visit Cupix and you think you're on a real estate marketing site, because some of the early pages aren't as focused on FM or AEC. But here we are on the pricing page. You can choose a capacity, and the capacity is per workspace. Workspaces are an important concept inside of Cupix because they control permissions. So if you want to share with a certain group of subs or a certain team, then you want to separate those guys out from different workspaces if you're going to have them be really collaborative in that workspace. If you're just sending out tours, that's a different thing. You can have one workspace and have a whole bunch of different clients. But if you're having a collaboration aspect where there's replies and comments and measurements and pins that are being taken, then you want to think about workspaces as a separator for collaboration. All right, so this is pricing for an individual workspace, and the individual workspaces have 3 gigabytes, 9 gigabytes, 30 gigabyte options. You can certainly go above 30 gigabytes. So that satellite office with 150 megabytes could be done actually with the petite plan. You could use the free plan to create that office. So you choose the appropriate plan depending on how much data you're planning to put up to Cupix. And this space it doesn't matter if you're hosting the data, if you've got people editing the data, if something's being processed. Space that's up on Cupix is counted as space. So it doesn't matter what stage that space is in. So long as it's up on Cupix, we're counting it. So it could be for creating, and you might just save out a CAD file and delete it. It could be for hosting for a long term, say for a museum. If it's up there, it counts as space. So that's the way we look at space. We're indifferent to what the space is being used for. So you choose a capacity. Does that make sense so far, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, and then you choose okay, so that's capacity. And the second option is packages. For a white label, you can choose the Studio Pack. The Studio Pack gives you the white label. It allows you to post to Google Street View, another good source of revenue, especially with these cameras. As great as they are, putting them up high, you can get some awesome perspectives of a restaurant or a public square. So the Studio Pack is going to provide that. The AEC Pack is going to provide the AEC functions. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the sketch feature that we've been looking at so far, where you're creating BIM, is in beta, but that's certainly an AEC type of feature, but that is in private beta. So it's not officially in any of these packages, but the capability is most similar to is the AEC package. The AEC pack is going to allow you to do the BIM comparison and the time-based comparison. So if you're going to that site over and over again for an hour at a time, digitizing 10,000, 50,000 square feet on a weekly basis, and you want to stack up all those tours so that the project manager or whoever's looking at the project can go back and forth in time, the AEC pack is going to get you there. And then the team pack is about collaboration. That's implied by the name. So if you're collaborating with a couple of different subs in one workspace, a couple of different people in another workspace, then you can get the team pack so those guys can collaborate in those different workspaces.
And I know the print's a little bit small, but this is all monthly pricing. So on the previous page, it was monthly, and now on the add-ons, it's monthly.
And that's US dollars, correct?
Yes.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and if you need we got yearly pricing. If you need something special, we're happy to send out quotes for that.
And these, everything we share, these 3D tours that we share would be hosted on your servers, correct?
That's the case at the moment. Yeah, everything's on our AWS server. You can choose a location. So you'd probably, if you're in Vancouver, you might choose, I don't know if there's an AWS location.
Excuse me, Scott, can you take it off screen share?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you have hyper fast access to your local region. So if you got some business over in New Brunswick, for example, you can choose a server closer to there. So wherever you are, you can choose where that data is being hosted.
Tim, I know you had a follow-up, but I just want to ask a follow-up to that comment. Scott, can you talk a little bit about offline?
There's no offline available now. So everything's on the cloud, but who knows?
I thought we had a package where you could export and have a player so that it never had it could always be closed, proprietary, and never public, and be still shared. Am I making this up?
Nothing like that. So for the tour to be created, it has to touch the cloud. So the data, all our processing, all of our algorithms, all of our R&D is on the cloud. So you get the photos up to the cloud, 360 photos up to the cloud, and then you can process, you can create the BIM, and then you can dig it off the cloud.
But then wasn't, Scott, am I just confused here? Because I thought after you did all the processing, you could then export everything, including a player.
I think you're seeing a little too far in the future. I don't think that's years in the future by any means, but you're talking about something that doesn't exist today.
But that is on your roadmap?
We have development. We don't want to overpromise anything, but that's not a.
Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe I was just dreaming that
be a nice feature, right? You could take it off the cloud. You could have that tour. You could synchronize it with the CAD.
I thought I read that somewhere too, Dan. So
save it for 5 years or 7 years.
Yeah. Sorry, Tim. I thought you asked a great question. You didn't ask about, well, could you look at it offline? But I thought
that was actually my follow-up question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What other questions you got, Tim?
Just about furniture. So, I mean, using photogrammetry, we can get walls, right? What about smaller features like furniture, desks, if we're doing layout plans? Right?
Yeah, you can do casework. You can get tables. You could model a chair. It's not really made to do a chair, but you could model blockish features or curved line piece curved features. Everything's straight though. So you can model up all sorts of casework. I don't know, Paul, you want to comment on that? You know the lingo a little bit better than I can sling. You're on mute.
Kind of goes to how far we want to take the BIM modeling. Again, we don't want to replace BIM modeling applications. So that's why we kind of created some generic tools to create basic shapes. So be it polylines, squares, those types of, those could represent that type of, anything sort of custom. So we don't have extensive features to say modeling stairs, but you could do that with these basic functions. Bunch of rectangles that could represent your stairs, and you can use the same geometry, the same imagery in the panoramic imagery to construct that. So, and it's also something where we see, get it into the application you want to work with, and then you can take it from there.
I have a quick small example of some casework that might be interesting. Hijack the screen for a little bit. So here is some data that is captured with this walkthrough method that I like so much. And just into like a narrow door, you got a table there, you got some casework. So we can model this up into, this kind of geometry, so you can use that where you need to. If you wanted to change the height of these things, you certainly could. But if you're thinking about modeling all those details there, you'd be better off importing a CAD file into the Revit model and laying it right on top of where that geometry is.
Tim, ask him some hard questions. Scott, if you could come off the sharing. Thank you.
Good question.
That's all I got right now. Sorry.
You know, nothing. There's nothing harder, really.
Not right now. Not that I can think
All
of.
right. So,
so you can, I'll point out a couple of other things. You can do multi-level, so you can work on multiple levels. You can have different levels. So on a level, if you got a sunken living room, if you're talking about real estate or raised platform, you can work with that as well. So we can accommodate that kind of geometry change. So multiple levels with different levels on the level are possible.
Tim, did you hear any? Are there features that you would want that you haven't heard? I know you wanted offline, but are there other things that you saw? I go, oh, but can you do this, this, and this features?
I know the offline was one of the bigger ones.
Okay, and Scott, Paul, you have a member of the We Get Around Network Forum community, on the chat here. What kind of questions you might have for Tim?
How's it? I don't really got any. How's the BLK? I don't know. What kind of questions you got?
It's not. I hate to say it, it's not the wisest purchase I've ever made. I mean, for $500, the bang for your buck for this is way better than the $25,000 I spent on this. It's just it is so painfully slow. I can't get over how slow this thing is.
Daniel,
Yeah.
look it.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to ask you one more question if we can get you, Tim. I still want to ask. I guess he lost his screen there. I think that's his VP of marketing that's needing some attention.
Must be. Yeah, it's got to be.
It's got to be all those marketing people, high maintenance or something. So, Tim, I just want, if we could take one more shot at asking the question, your big picture reaction of what you saw. You're in the space. You're in the weeds doing this stuff. What's your perspective on what you do?
Right. Big picture. No, it looks like it. I mean, you're on the right track to becoming a game changer and definitely speeding up our workflow and our process. So, I mean, yeah, I'm very interested. I was speaking to my partner, and yeah, we're all very interested here on where this is going. Definitely be emailing you for to be part of this beta program and see where it goes. Just during this this webinar, I've had 2 requests for some as-builts. I mean, they're coming in daily. So if we can start doing more than 1 a day, that'll help us out a lot.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. Just invaluable being on the show. Really appreciate you asking questions and being here with us. And I'm sorry I hit your mute button. And thank you for bringing your VP of marketing along too to help enhance the experience. So I'm going to just kind of summarize what my takeaway is. We've been on the show for nearly 2 hours here, doing a little deep dive into the process. And I just want to say, I think, Tim probably summed it up. I said, if this is a tool that can help us do as-builts and do it in a rapid way, make our life easier and faster, that's going to enable service providers to solve real life problems that involve going from 360 photos to 3D tour to 2D CAD to 3D CAD, and have a workflow that is somewhat, for those who specialize in this, easy, fast, simple, and give a lot more time back to shooting more jobs. And then I think Tim also, I think you commented about progress reporting, that opens up a whole new world. You could not do that with Matterport and your BLK. You could literally do that with your under $500 MySphere camera is doing.
Yeah, and the ongoing construction documentation, which speaking with builders and contractors, that's the way of the future. To be able to go back, I think you mentioned earlier about pre-drywall stage, pre-frame or pre-electrical stage, and just seeing where things are hidden. That's huge, and to be able to do it in minutes rather than hours is very good. For AEC, I'll probably continue to use the BLK for now, but for our real estate plans, I think this is the way to go. To be in and out in minutes rather than an hour and a half is probably where we'll make the most use of this.
That's awesome. That's really great. Okay, thank you, everybody. Scott, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Dan.
Paul, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Paul, Cupix, head of marketing. Scott, the director of sales. Tim, thank you for being on the show today. Very, very much
Thanks
appreciated.
for dragging me in.
Yeah, you bet. And I'm Dan Smigrod. I'm the founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Thanks for tuning in to WGAN-TV, and you all have a happy holiday. Have a happy and safe holiday.
You too.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.